It's Thursday. Oops, it's Thursday, June 19th. It's 12 p.m. and we are here for Finding Truth Everywhere, courtesy of Cindy Krupp and the I Am an Open Door. All are welcome. Yep. And if you're just listening to this for the first time, welcome and know that you always have a place at the table here. This is an interesting discussion for today. There's a lot in this, and I will begin by introducing Kendall, who suggested this to Cindy. And this is going to be kind of for me, an opportunity to invite Kendall to speak, which she doesn't do really here, or to just use the chat. So we'll do whatever Kendall wants to do. She says, I hear what Rana is saying about the interviewer, and I agree, yet I felt Zach's heart deeply and his commitment to drop the performance energies we are also addicted to in this culture of looking for awards. And he did say a lot of that in this. So what I'm going to do as we go through, I have 3 pages of notes, but I think what I'll do is just read Kendall's notes that she sent, and then we can maybe take off and go from there. So I'm trying to see if I can read my notes here. So Kendall says that what she really liked was the interconnectedness, his message about connection and interconnectedness, and that you can't have one without the other. She said she liked it that you have the soul level and the biology, and one doesn't work without the other. She said it's like an architectural drawing. If you let it just sit there without putting the parts together, or building and connecting the parts, you just have a drawing or stagnation. Or if you have a particular recipe and you have all the ingredients, yet you don't combine them and mix them, you essentially have separate ingredients and no cohesion. And I will say that is the epitome of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, which is really an ancient understanding, and it's a part of alchemy, the whole foundation of alchemy, in which the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So she loved his description of the light force and psyche and soul. And as an example, she said, all the light contained in our mitochondria, which is 10,000 times more powerful than sunlight, or the ovum from conception, which has the biology, but essentially not the master plan. And then the light switch that ignites the constituents, or in the case of a recipe, to connect and produce a finished product. I found it very interesting when he talked about the moment of conception and the light. He used a term that I can't remember, the light that goes off at the moment of conception. I found that very interesting, but I also thought he contradicted himself, the zinc flash. And perhaps Kendall could explain more of that, because he did say that if it wasn't in his experience, he didn't quite believe it. And I have never heard of a zinc flash at conception, and I really doubt that Zach has ever seen it himself, or remembers his own zinc flash. Maybe he does, but I would love to hear more about that because it's a really powerful image. Rana, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just did a little search on that. It says the zinc spark or flash is a tiny burst of light that occurs when a sperm fertilizes an egg.
How is that measured? Okay, that's amazing. That is amazing. Okay. Thank you for that. And then this, I really love this too. She had so much to say about separation, abandonment, addictions to emotions and numbing out, and what he called our antibiotic culture of hoarding and the continuum of separation. I loved that. The other things that, again, I questioned, but maybe there's more information than I know. The whole blood platelet story about taking an aspirin and having it show up in a blood platelet across the town. You know, I remember the first experiment I heard of, which was called the Delft experiment. It was done at Delft University, where, and I tell you, just to conceive of this experiment requires genius mind, but it was the ability to prove the um, the theory of spooky action at a distance. So spooky action at a distance is I'm probably not going to be able to describe this very well, but it is essentially the quantum interconnectedness of particles. So that if and what the Delft experiment did is they divided. I'm going to probably describe this incorrectly, so if someone knows how to describe this better than I, please jump in. They essentially split a photon in the lab and sent one photon here and another photon miles and miles away, measuring each photon as they did so, and then they changed the rotation of photon A and looked at what happened to photon B, and it mirrored that change. And that was the first proof that spooky action at a distance was more than just a theory, that actually there is, on a quantum level, interconnectedness. So that's what the blood platelet story about taking an aspirin and having it affect the blood platelet all the way down. And identical twin studies are sort of similar to that. Yeah, in some ways. This is a really interesting thing that Kendall noted. She said, "You were born perfect, or you would not have completed yourself in the womb." That's, yeah, yeah. So the essential map was perfect at conception, you know, even when it's not. Olivia.
Yeah, would you mind putting that statement in the chat about being born perfect?
Sure,
Okay, thank you.
sure. I will copy that from Kendall's notes and I will put that in. And then she said, "We signed up for this journey to forget everything. We come in complete, and then we have deep amnesia regarding our wholeness. And we're on a journey to remember all of that, to remember all of that." And it gives us a framework about birth and an endpoint that's very real. And she said, in three-dimensional space, there's an endpoint, and it's worth feeling all of that. And Kendall just noted that hopefully that reduces fear, guilt, and shame and moves us into a sense of wonderment. And then she talked about death and the fact that in Bhutan and Tibet, they honor the wonderment of death, where there are daily honorings and parades, and there's more curiosity and reverence towards death. And she looked at that with an example with the LA fires. And what's left out of those fires is beauty. And then that moves into what is authentic, what is truly left after everything else is burned away. And what's left becomes purer and purer and purer and more authentic. She said, grieve what is lost, rejoice in what is saved, and reevaluate what's valuable. Um, and then the last thing I'll say, she said, themes that come up for her, we spend too much time with the people that we don't really care that much about, and we don't spend enough time with people we really resonate with, right? And that at that death, that's usually only when we reevaluate our lives is when we're faced with the end of the cycle, and that we should do that more often. And so Zach goes into his personal life and discovers the more altruistic your identity is. I'm not exactly sure, Kendall, what you meant here. Zach goes into his personal life and discovering the more altruistic your identity is, the harder to let go of in this performative environment. So, yes, in this performative environment, which is so true, I love that he named that. It is harder to be your authentic self because our authentic selves are wacky. They're unique, right? They're really off kilter. They're beautiful. They don't earn money, right? Right? They're not performative. And so it's disruptive to, he let go of the performative stuff because he found it was disruptive to his authentic capacity being a human. And when he let go of that performative thing, his authenticity showed up. And that's what I have. And then he said, let go of all accolades, and when you live authentically, you're ready to die today. So that is it. And Livy.
Oh, okay.
Your hand is up. I'm sorry. I just put the thing in the chat and I saw your hand goes up, so I'm double
Yes. So,
multitasking.
one of the things that with so many of these teachers and teachings, I'm like, oh, if I'd only known this sooner, or oh, if I'd only been aware of this sooner. And especially with his talk on stress. And, because I have so many physical ailments that are directly due to trying not to be my authentic self, and not, going with and not knowing to move with the stress, and that I didn't have to control or hold on so tightly. And I loved his description of that, and if anything I can use it going forward. And so I was really, really grateful for so much. And, that's just something I wanted to bring up, just to be the awareness of that going forward. I'm very grateful for. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I found that too. Something that he said about I'll go back to my notes and I'll find it, but thank you. Cindy, what have you got for us?
Couple things. First is just the picture that got instilled of a mighty, beautiful oak, not knowing it's a mighty, beautiful oak, and not needing, because it doesn't know, it doesn't describe itself as that. Something dropped when he was just even describing his friends and the Academy Awards and the Tonys, and how normal that is in our culture. And I've been walking around with that changing me, the, the mighty oak or the ancient trees or the grass. like these beautiful lawns and the garden parties and the awards for the prettiest flowers. The flowers don't, what part of a flower look at how pretty my leaves are. There was something in that picture that I just really wanted to say out loud again. The second thing is a confession, and it's curious for me. This part of our personality structure or whatever it is that thinks somebody knows something that I need, both with him and with Corey. They were both kind of powerful sales. Well, their sales pitch touched something here, and I consciously didn't buy their products, but investigated. And it was a very interesting thing to watch, especially with Corey, more with Corey than with Zach, how many times I went back to his website and almost clicked the buy now button. And then really sat and paused and said, now why? What is it he's offering that isn't part of my current practice or whatever? But it was just, I really just wanted to confess that it's an interesting kind of pull here. I don't want to speak to anyone else, how often, it's the next buy or the next product or the next search will give me something that something here says I don't have at the moment. And that feels very, very different to me anyway than the desire to watch a Helen Hamilton podcast, for instance, or a lot of the things we do here. There's a natural open, I don't need to, but I'm just going to because it feels good, as opposed to how that activity felt. So I just wanted to say it out loud. I imagine it's not just me. I imagine it's what holds a lot of the human psyche in place. The third thing which was I thought was not as powerful, but those other two were important to me that I hadn't heard mentioned before, was again in just my personal psyche and listening to him, especially when he was talking about the Aztecs and this idea that we don't have a history as a human race that goes back past 5,000 or 6,000 years. This idea of a blanket amnesia. I don't know. Like, I know what historians say, and I know they dig up dinosaur bones or whatever they dig up. I don't spend a lot of time with it, but I recognize that when I sit in my own space, I keep saying, I'm a product of my history, but I have no idea, past what my grandparents were like, what my history is. And yet I can accept that I'm being affected by that. So this idea of a blanket amnesia, like we know the pyramids are there, but we don't know how. Where did the pyramids come from? Where did these ancient runes, the Mayans and the Aztecs, the people tell stories, and maybe in their cultures, they have a different tradition that I'm not aware of, but just the sense that there's a lot more going on than Cindy's sense of self. Like even saying that, there's a resistance to saying that. So this idea of a mass hypnotic state that limits my experience to a specific kind of programmed box, like somehow that got activated in me as I was listening to him speak. Don't got any answers, but as uncomfortable as it feels really valuable for me to continue to hold on to this idea that there are blind spots here. And I don't know what's on the other side. So I just wanted to say those things. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Indigo, but before I do, I want to ask Patricia how her tour went yesterday.
Thank you very much. I was in it's a lovely area. It's quiet and peaceful versus the city I live in right now. And I didn't find anything. Not yet, but thank you for asking. I
Okay.
don't want to interrupt, but thank you very much for asking. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, if you have further thoughts, raise your hand and we're here. Ndago. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hi everyone. So great to be here. I just love being here. And I love all this discomfort and all this shit. So it's so amazing I so the person who's the aide, she's doing things differently than I do. Like I have ways, oh, I do this, I do this, I do that. And she's doing it differently. And so it's so great to be in the different. It's so great. I can't tell you how great it is because it's like in my mind, I'm like, no, it's supposed to be like this. I do it like this. And just to stop and go, okay, let me just be with it. That's just Indigo in her regular habits. So it's so just and 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 then I'm like, no. And then I sit in it and I'm like, it's okay. Why isn't Dago all thinking it has to be this way? And that's just the way that I guess she was raised or whatever. So it's just so great to just stop and to take a look at it like, oh, do I really? Let me just be here. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought. Oh, okay, let me embrace all of it. Let me bring it all in. Let me just love it. So yeah. And I just love being here with all of you. It's just such a gift. I just it's just such a gift to be together. That's the other thing. It's just such a gift to be together because we all are one. We're not separate. So I love all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Indigo. Great reminders as always. Before Barbie gets in, I just wanted to add one thing, and then we'll go to Barbie and then Julie. I loved that he said the most important thing for health is the third layer of identity. And then he described what the three layers are briefly: the energetic soul level, the biological level, and the psychological level. And he said, of the three, the psychological is the most damaging because we are nature and we cannot see ourselves as separate from that. He said there's a fundamental wound in our psyche and we are addictive because we're trying to fill the wound of separation. The abandonment is the central theme. This is so Course in Miracles. It's the central theme. And he said, we are in opposition to nature. And it's interesting. This is a difference in that course. He says, the war against nature is the formation of the ego. Now, I guess it depends on what you describe nature as. God is nature. So we could look at it that way. But in the physical level, we feel threatened by nature and abandoned by it. And so we become addicted to technology, drugs, and unnatural things that are anti-biological. And he said it's in all cultures. It's the human condition. And so just wanted to put that out there. And then he went into all the story about the gatherer hunters that ate too much antibiotic, and the fact that they had 40,000 species of bacteria in their biome, and the average human has only 8,000. And all of those bacteria are light. They're all light sources. So they're filling us up with their light because they all have mitochondria. You know, all those bacteria have mitochondria. It's just an interesting thought. Anyway, Barbie, what have you got for us this afternoon?
Was going to put down my hand, but I know I'd be called on anyways,
Yes,
so
you
I
would.
did it.
You would, you're right.
So I have a question on people that have ectopic pregnancies. Because this Bush was telling you how when, how when they get fertilized, it takes a long journey to find wherever it to eventually get down to being consumption. But then I was going back to Christensen, what's his name? That he was in the womb and he wanted to go out. So he just said, I want to leave. So what actually happens during ectopic pregnancies? Does the embryo decide it doesn't want to be here, or I don't know. I'm just curious.
That's a really, it's an interesting expression, or question, but I always pull us back to there is no separate embryo, right? The embryo is one aspect, is an aspect of the one consciousness. So who knows? And that you're right about Christian Sonderberg and his experience being an embryo and saying, I can already feel the loss here, and I don't want any part of that. And that's an interesting perspective given what Bush said about the embryo being completely whole. That's very interesting. I get what you're saying. Anybody have any thoughts on that? I would suggest it's not either or, Rana.
I think that's perfection as well.
Yeah.
Because when that was first mentioned, right, that beautiful statement about us being perfect, of course, the mind was like, well, what happened to Kylie? And then that's followed right up with, she's perfect. She's just one of the infinite divine expressions. And so that's what I'm thinking about in this, it was perfect. When Christian talked about coming into the womb and like freaking out and realizing that no way can I do this, and then decided not to, that was perfect. All those people that were affected by that, in a perfect way for them to experience those things. So I don't think I, as a human, can understand that perfection. I think that's the problem for me, as I try to put a label of perfection. That's a human definition of what I think perfect looks like, forgetting that that is so limited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ronald.
Julie, welcome to the head of the table.
Hi. Oh, so grateful to be here. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I don't know what Ron had said earlier regarding Zach. I don't know if it was his voice or whatever, but I thoroughly loved it. I did have to get used to the way he spoke in the beginning, though. That did kind of like, okay, I can tell if it was monotone or whatever. But and when he said, he was a hospice doctor for 4 years. So in the beginning, I like when he said, the way you live is the way you die. And how he said that kids transition differently than adults and elderly. It's like he gave an example of this 11-year-old, I think she was, or 12, how she just accepted death easier than people as we get older. And I thought his example was beautiful. And one other thing I liked regarding the death, he said, when you love unconditionally and you're going through grief, you know, the grief then will take you to this utmost joy. And it's worth it to go through this, because you're going to come out with this joy and ecstasy, and then until you deal with loss again. And I really connected with that, because when my brother died suddenly, well, he had a terminal illness, but he took his life before he died from the illness. And that was really very hard on me, his death. But now, and it's been 5 years, but now I see through the death has been, I have found this joy that I've never experienced before. So that really resonated with that. So that's just one of those things I connected with. But I really enjoyed this. And yeah. So thank you. And I'm so happy to be part of this too, because I just keep on learning, and I keep on being like, whoa, and then have to, just come down back to earth. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. He talks about unconditional love has to be rooted in the understanding that all loss is part of the whole. Everything is part of the whole, even loss, but not understanding it is where the abandonment disorder begins, right? Not understanding that. And I love that he said depression is a non-feeling state. And numbness is the most terrifying state to biology, because you just don't feel. I had a wonderful teacher, in fact, one of my first teachers, who she had a out-of-body experience, and she said just what Bush said, that we store these emotions, and then if we fully feel the feeling, then it moves through the body as an energetic. It moves through, and it cleans the body like waves through the ocean. And Zoe would say it also invigorates the body. It is a form of spirit moving through and invigorating the body. And she used to describe it in terms of a tube. And so the spirit and the astral body, or they're different bodies, but it would move through from the etheric into the body, and then as it moved out, while you felt it, it would kind of flush the body of all that needed to be flushed out. So yeah. And I thought about that with my granddaughter, who was running to the car on an asphalt pavement and tripped and fell. And her crying was absolutely cathartic. I mean, she held nothing back when she cried. It was just a wail of a cry. And it went on and on and on. And she had enough caring adults around her that they picked her up and they let her cry, and they comforted, and they didn't try to shut her down or stop her. And as adults, I think, wouldn't it be lovely if we could do that? Wouldn't that be healing if, as adults, we could just wail and have someone say it's okay? Just cry as much as you want to. Let it all out. Let it all out. So healing. Just to think of it, I can feel things moving through me. Just to say the words. Cindy. Ah,
I raised my hand with Barbie's question. And what wants to be said is that this is one perspective of many perspectives that we've been talking about like in all the open door meetings. And there's a sense here of not taking any of it as an isolated whatever. Like that's another thing I've noticed. This mind wants to say this is true, which means this isn't, which this isn't. And the words that came up, there were two, and one was Keith Kavanaugh in my head saying, the course doesn't care if there's inconsistencies. It just wants you to take the next step, you know, whatever, right? But it's also Joel, and we've talked about it, that what this is here, in the body and the personality. I'll confirm. Yes, Google, I'm speaking English. That what this is an individuated temporary expression of the formless that has taken this this expression as form, but has never left the formless, right? That's a big part of what happened when we did Helen reality check twice, is that it's all true. It's all true. So there are no hard and fast rules, and biology is so very, very useful, and studying the body is so very, very useful. And Joel Goldsmith, among others, have taught me that everything we know about biology is held within this invisible wall that says what I am as a body and not source. And there's a mesmerizing thing that happens that is conditioned within our body. But, you know, one of the other things Joel keeps saying is, if the rule's broken once, it's not a rule. It's just like an agreement to have an experience.
Yeah.
So knowing all those things and being willing to like soften my expectations of what it means to be a human in the body has become so very important in whatever it is we're doing. So that's sort of what was coming up, was like biology is beautiful and everything he shared was interesting, and I like to eat well and drink enough water and take care of the body, and the body is an individualized temporary manifestation of the infinite invisible, or the formless, or God, and it's going to go back there, and all the rules, the so-called rules that we seem to abide in when we believe we're somehow separate from source, aren't really rules. They're just agreements to play in a certain way. But those rules get broken all the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Libby.
And another thing that he mentioned that, and I didn't go back and write it down. It was when he was talking about our separateness and how that makes it possible for us to see the beauty, and that it wants to see itself, you know, and I think about that and what a gift, you know, the sunrise and the sunset, or even just an amazing performance by a musician or an actor that just moves me to tears, or moves me down, as we talk or say, to my soul. He just touched my soul, or I saw his soul in a performance, or something like that. And that I get to have those experiences are just so, you know, truly amazing. And to be able to recognize that in viewing that, and then at the same time recognize I am that, you know, I mean, just to sort of make it come full circle. But I love having the experience of breathing with a tree, or, and, but, you know, I love music, and I love acting and actors, and and dancers, oh my goodness, what the expression that, and then art, visual art, people can feel something and it comes out their fingers or something. All of that, just the beauty that there is, and it is very subjective. I do love the Nine Inch Nails. And so, it just, I was grateful that he brought up that part. And yeah, and that meant a lot to me and affirmed a lot to me as well. That um, I can enjoy it all as separate from me and recognizing as I am that at the same time.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I love that.
Mm. And yet it's the beauty in you that is able to recognize the beauty in the apparently separate other, right? So it's not something outside you that's beautiful. It's what's inside you and what you are that's beautiful. Recognizing the expression of beauty in the oneness that you are. Yeah. Yeah. It's all within, right? One thing that I really also appreciated, or I just found noteworthy, was when he talked about reevaluation, allowing us to see that we need to spend more time with the people that we love, and how his experience is that people that live in more rural environments have seem to have less separation. People from urban environments seem at the end of life, that they've missed out on more than other people from rural areas, because rural folks have more connection to their lineage and the land, right? And so they don't feel this quite so much. And his description of wealthy people that live in social caste systems, which is exactly the right way to describe it. Social caste systems, like LA and New York. He said you can tell, you can recognize them from those who live in more egalitarian environments. And boy, is that true. That is so true. And we all have our stories about that. But he said the amount of effort that they need to create and sustain that false identity, it just makes me weep. He said it's really sad. And boy, do I see that. We all have people in our lives that we recognize how much effort they have to expend in order to maintain this false identity. And in a sense, how much effort we all, as spirit in human form, have to work. That's why we need to sleep at night, because it takes so much effort to continue this illusion, this projection that we're all in.
And you don't have to just be from I mean, I worked really hard somebody wrote a song that Bonnie Raitt said, and the last line is, "It takes a whole lot of medicine for me to pretend I'm somebody else." And the name of the song is Guilty. And boy, that was who I was for a long time. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's not just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And he said how emergency situations, whether they're self-imposed or they seem to come from the outside, they can shatter that identity. They can just shatter it. And during the California fires, the folks that came into the hotel from the Palisades just looked different, right? From the folks that were just finding refuge that were just, you know, not trying to preserve some false identity quite so much. It was really, really interesting. It reminded me actually of going to Italy and going to Pompeii and seeing people trying to flee with all their jewelry as that ancient city was being engulfed by the lava. They left with as much jewelry as they could get, you know. They had to take that with them. And some people died trying to go back and get the jewelry. But yeah.
And we've seen that in all the Indiana Jones movies as well.
Well, that was perfect. Thank you. Maybe we need to have a movie night. Oh, Sandra.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, there were a couple, I like listening every week to all these different perspectives, and you may have mentioned this before I got on, but I really like the interviewer.
That's what Rana was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked her. I felt her joy in what she was doing, even beyond her words. And I think she came closest to the title. The title of this was Unlock the Secret to Healing Illness. And I always, those titles grab me. I want to know the secret, because I have many, I don't want to say many. I have physical symptoms all the time. So, but there were some things that I really liked that he said that were resonating. I like the whole idea of an energetic identity. The energetic identity. I remember Eckhart Tolle would talk about that. He said, try to feel that inner energy. And there is this energetic identity and the whole idea, like you already said, of the 3 different levels of identity. I liked all of that. It was very interesting. He came to life a few times when he was talking about the miraculous nature of life, when he was explaining all that biology and all of that science. And then, I couldn't follow all of it, but the bottom line is, it's a miracle we're here. It's just a miracle. The whole, just living is such a gift. Just waking up and breathing and having this energetic identity and this physical body where I get to experience things. I really like that. One thing that really captured my attention was after he went through a lot of the things that I think he was implying we've done wrong as a species with the whole anti-life. And he went through all these things, antibiotics and this and that. But there is a part of me that, and he's very much liked the indigenous cultures and the simplicity of their lives. And I understand that, and I agree. And I think many of the scientific breakthroughs that have enabled children to live longer and, being able to cure an infection with an antibiotic certainly enabled me to live a longer time in this body. And I think all of it is from source, all of it. So after he did all of that, he did come to this other part, which I really loved. And this was the best part of it, was when he said, I don't know his exact words, but something like, when the cells have unfiltered access to this information that we can release the trauma, we are bulletproof. And I thought, this bulletproof, yes, that I think David Hawkins, maybe Cindy can help me with this because I might have it wrong, but he talks about how, in this decade, we weren't supposed to eat eggs. And then in this decade, we weren't supposed to eat sugar. And now it's okay to eat eggs. But so David Hawkins' premise is what we think about it that matters. is how we take in the information. And I think that's kind of what he was getting at when he said, when we understand the power of the psychological identity, and we understand that these physical responses are to that, then we are not dependent on anything. He says, the biological self has everything it needs. Everything it needs. And that once we get that, then we become bulletproof. So it doesn't matter if I eat all that sugar and ice cream. Not that it doesn't matter, but do you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm not so wrapped up in the physical things, knowing that the true being that I am is whole and complete. I think at one point he even said that that field can't be perturbed, to use that word, it can't be messed with, no matter what happens in the body. And that's the bulletproof nature of it. So, I remember once when I was after I had Lyme disease, I got really into, plant-based medicine and functional medicine, and was really trying very hard to control what was happening in the body. And it just came to me one day that all that didn't matter. It's what I believed about it that mattered. It just hit me like that what I put my faith in is what mattered. What I really believed about myself is what mattered. So I don't know if I'm ever going to be bulletproof. I don't know if I need to be bulletproof. I just know that the truth of who I am is so amazingly resilient, strong, unlimited, that whatever happens in the body, I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm completely okay. And sometimes when something happens, I've actually had healings. I've had healings. And we have had experiences in these meetings where somebody comes at the beginning meeting saying they're feeling pain. At the end of the meeting, they say, I'm not feeling pain anymore right now, because of the vibrational level that we've experienced amongst ourselves. So I like that. I like that. While there is no, quote, secret to healing, I don't think, I believe there is a truth, an underlying truth about who we are. And when we are fully identified with the truth of who we are, many of these things that bothered us about being in the body kind of disappear. They go away. Either they don't bother us as much, or they completely go away. So that was my response to that. Thank you for sharing this, whoever picked it.
Kendall.
I love hearing these different voices, and really, especially when they're so different. So thank you.
Yeah. All right, Patricia, I saw your hand go up. Thank you, Sandra. There you go.
Can you hear me now? No.
Yeah.
I'm having difficulty with my connection to the internet. You're all frozen, and you're frozen in your beauty. Really, it's wonderful. Anyway, my apologies for that. I maybe clicked right out. What I was thinking was nothing is going to be perfectly healed. Our psychology will never be perfectly healed. Nor will our bodies be perfectly healed. It's imperfectly perfect, just as it is. And I appreciated his recognition of that. Sorta. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. You know, part of this discussion is a form of level confusion. And so what level confusion it really deals with is trying to apply the spiritual level at the physical level, trying to apply the laws at the spiritual level to the laws at the physical level. And they're much different. So, but it's also remembering that the physical is created through the idea. All apparent physicality is an idea. So he said, you know, this permanent energetic identity is what allows you to knit yourself together in the mother's womb. And it's an energetic identity, as Sandra said, that manifests as human. And that having that self-identity is really important because it maintains a safe or secure or healthy boundary, which is and I think for me, when I'm thinking about this, I think, well, I am one with everything, but that doesn't mean that I'm just some amorphous blob. What do I bring to the one? I bring to the one this beautiful gem, this uniqueness that I am. And I have to love that and allow that and explore that to my fullest authentic ability. And then I bring it back to the whole. So,
But didn't the whole create that as well?
yes,
This unique Amy?
absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's both and, right? It's
Mhm.
both and. Yes, it is something beyond the little mind's ability to really comprehend. But yes. Thank you for that reminder, Patricia. Cindy, you want to close us out?
I do have that song once we turn the video, the recording off. But I wanted to voice my gratitude for all of this meeting. It was pretty spectacular. But also just this, how many times do we have to remember level confusion and not, you know, not trying to tell the orange that it's a really, really bad blue, you know, that type of thing. The rules or the ways of doing things are different depending on your point of viewing, and you pointed that out. And I was sitting with it, and one of the things the guides have been teaching me over and over and over again lately is to be very aware of expectations, that all expectations are a result of believing our history, and our history is being undone and as we are being made anew. So whenever I hear myself say, this is what I know is happening, and this is what's about to happen, and I know this is the way it's going to look, I am now being pinged that what I'm doing is creating a future based on the past. And I don't will to do that anymore. I'd rather meet the now, right? William, I went to see how William responded to that word. I would prefer to meet now with as much presence as I am capable of in the moment, letting go of as many expectations as I find. So that's what came up for me to share.
Thank you.
And I do have that song once we turn the recording off.
All right. Well, at the end of it, I just want to say one thing. Kendall says, I love walking in nature and witnessing that the amazing and spectacular old growth tree is in beauty by relationship to its surrounding neighbors in the surrounding plants, all big and small. If any of you have any of you read the book Serviceberry? It's written by, oh, I'm going to forget her name. She's a Native American. She teaches at Yale or some Ivy League school, but it's all about service. And the Serviceberry feeds everything, and it asks for nothing and it gives everything, and it's in service, in perfect balance to everything around it. And there are many, 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 many names for what we call the Serviceberry. And the more names a plant has, the more you know that it's in service, because it has names for so many different things it does. So it's a great book, Serviceberry. It's very short and we can check it out. Yes, Robin Wall Kimmerer. Yeah, thank you. She's a beautiful, beautiful writer. She
Thank
wrote
you.
Braiding Sweetgrass, which many of you might know.
Well, that's 61 minutes. So let me turn the recording off. Oh, and by the way, Amy, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, Amy. Your explanations are so clear.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kendall. I mostly read from Kendall. But
All right,
thank you.
I'm gonna turn this recording